Welcome to the African History Notebook. I'm your host, Dr. Clyde Ahmed Winters. The African History tonight I'm going to talk about some of the ancient people, but I also have a real treat. I'm very excited. Dr. David Imhotep, he's going to be on the show tonight, and he's going to talk about his new book, The First Americans Were Africans, Documented Evidence. This is very exciting to me because Dr. Imhotep is making the black community very excited because of the fact that he's presenting so much evidence for the first time. You know, we've had Ivan Van Sertima, he talked about the Olmecs, and he talked about the Malians who came from Mali and settled in Mexico and Central America. What Dr. Imhotep is going to talk about is those early Americans here, those Americans, those Africans who came here 60, 30,000 years ago. So I'm very excited. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first give a little down, talking about some of the African communities in the Americas that I haven't talked about already. And then probably around 20 minutes after the hour, on into the second half hour, we're going to talk to Dr. Imhotep and let him tell us about his book and make us more aware of it. As I've talked earlier, in terms of this particular point, is bring on Dr. Imhotep. Dr. Imhotep, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay, how you doing?
I'm doing well, brother. How are you?
Oh, just fine. Thanks a lot for coming on, Dr. Imhotep. I know you've been engaged in a lot of speaking engagements lately, and I've heard that you've been going around the country, telling people about your book. And I'm very glad that you could take time to share with us some information about your book. And the reason
could I say one thing first?
Yeah,
I'd like to thank Brother Heru Anu Ka for making this show possible. Without him, you and I wouldn't be here. And also, Dr. Winters doesn't talk much about himself, but this guy is on a par with about close to Cheikh Anta Diop. The man's writings are as on point as they are. His references, his information, his historical point of view are right on line with his as well. So this fellow is far underappreciated and unknown in this country, and I hope he talks about his two books he's written. And I just can't say enough about how incredible a researcher is and how much he's helped me in the past. Go ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Imhotep. You're a great scholar and researcher yourself. In fact, I'm so proud and excited about the fact that you're the first person that I know, and I'll have to check the records, that you're the first person to ever get a PhD in Afrocentric studies. A lot of people may have gotten in African history or Afro-American studies, but Dr. Imhotep, he has a PhD. That's the highest degree you can get in Afrocentric studies. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
I would say first that I have a first PhD specializing in ancient African history. Okay, about myself, my book, first of all, I'd like to say that historictruth.info is my website, and you can go to Facebook and add me onto your Facebook information. My PhD, why did I get that PhD? I wanted to fight historical inaccuracies, and especially white supremacy in academia. With a PhD degree, that should open the door, as I said, should open the doors that some people cannot get into, so that I can fight them as far as articles and radio shows like this, television shows, especially articles from magazines that are inaccurate in fighting, I would say, Hollywood, and putting out garbage movies showing that the ancient Egyptians were anyone but Africans, and that they were not the Antichrist or these horrible people as some of the movies portray them to be. They're anything but those people. So,
okay, that's great. Dr. Imhotep, what began your interest in writing your book, The First Americans Were Africans? Where does that idea originate?
It's an extension of my dissertation, some parts of it, a little part of it, and that is the little people, the Twa, the Anu, the Khoi, the Khoikhoi, and the Khoisan. They were the first people to come over to the Americas. So I wanted to expand that in another media that was not appropriate for my dissertation. And Dr. Ivan Van Sertima's book, They Came Before Columbus, was written 35 years ago. And since then, much new evidence has been uncovered. So with those two and a few other things together, putting before you know it, I was on my way to writing this book.
That sounds quite interesting. You mentioned Dr. Van Sertima. What other researchers influenced you and maybe made you decide on writing this book, especially because of the fact that it seems as though you're taking an entirely unique approach?
Well, Dr. Van Sertima wrote that Africans came before Columbus, and I'm writing that the Africans came before even the Indians, the so-called Indians. Another book I would say that influenced me was Dr. Barry Fell's book, America B.C. He was a Harvard professor who wrote some fantasy mythology about how the first Caucasians came over 1700 B.C. and left a colony. Some Scandinavian king left a colony of people and then mysteriously disappeared. And these people, unfortunately, mysteriously disappeared too because there is no evidence of them. The first evidence of any Caucasians in Americas were Vikings. And as you know, Dr. Winters, you wrote a little something in my foreword, the book about this. His claim to fame was that these white or Caucasian Vikings or whatever came over and built mounds in North America, which is not true. Also, there's no such thing as Indian mounds because they didn't build them either. The Africans built these mounds. They were the mound building society, or the ancient mound builders. And the part that you interested me about was that the second point that he had in his books, American B.C., and talked about the different writings that he said that the Vikings made, and they did not make them. Those were African writings that you wrote about in my foreword, talking about how it was the Africans from Central America who went up there and made these writings. So there is no evidence of the Vikings being in North America before 1000 B.C.
Okay. In the time you're
sorry, 1000 A.D. Excuse me, I'm very sorry. It's 2,000 years later. 1000 A.D. Go ahead.
Okay, that's great. Your title, The First Americans or Africans as Documented Evidence. What do you mean when you say documented evidence?
Okay, I went to the Smithsonian because to get some more information, and because in the last 10 years, I've always been interested in the Indians and where they came from, and I always ask them where they came from, and they always say, well, we've always been here. So I went to the Smithsonian, and on a day that they were having a speaker, a Native American, so-called Native American speaking, and my wife asked him where the Native Americans originated. And I was videotaping, not audio, but video and audio taping. And he said, quote, "We came from the rocks, we came from the earth, we came from the rivers, we came from underneath the oceans, we came from the heavens, we came from all these places, and you must have faith that we came from these places, just as the Christians have faith in their stories." Well, my evidence comes from skulls, skeletons, footprints in lava, 30,000 years old, campsites, 60,000 years older, genetic evidence, linguistics, paintings, tools, carving, architecture, Egyptian writing, the artifacts, and some of their structures. So I think that kind of trumps what he was talking about.
Okay, right now we're going to take a short break, and we're going to have an musical interlude, and they're going to have a few commercials. And then, Dr. Hotep, I hope you'll just relax in the studio, and I'll be getting right back to you.
It'll be fine.
The African History Notebook.
Welcome back to the African History Notebook. I'm your host, Dr. Clyde Winters, and tonight I have a real treat, a very exciting writer and researcher, Dr. David Imhotep, PhD, and I can tell you that it's it's not easy to get a PhD, so I'm excited to talk to that. Dr. Imhotep, you know, I was looking at the first Americans were Africans, documented evidence, and it's a very interesting cover. Who did that cover, or why did you make that cover for your book?
I made the cover. What the cover is, for those who can't see it, you can go to historictruth.info and see it. It's a picture of a black man. He looks like a brother out of Watts or out of New York City. However, it's a picture of the very first picture of a real, actual Native American that was taken in 1850 or 1872 or 3. It was part of the HMS Challenger, which is a boat that came from England going to passing by South America and going up into the Pacific, and they stopped at the tip of South America at Tierra del Fuego to fuel up with wood and food and water, and they enslavement.
Instead of saying the so-called Native Americans, you know, the Woo Indians, black people, and they took a picture of him. And that picture of him hangs now today in the museum, Natural History Museum of London.
Oh wow, that's exciting, man. Because you know now you wouldn't think that that was black people down that far in South America near the South Pole. You know, the book is full of so many interesting things, and it's I'd like to know what was the hardest part of writing the book? What was the most part in terms of organizing it, or what did you find most shocking?
Well, not most shocking, but the hardest part was the research. The second hardest part was finding a good editor, a great editor, which I still haven't found. But I wanted to mention one thing that would drive people to say, well, what the heck happened if the first people in America were blacks? Where'd the Indians come from? Well, my evidence is that black folks have been coming here for 60, 70, 80, maybe even 100,000 years. But the hard evidence, I have hard evidence from them coming over at least 60,000 years ago. Now, the first Asians, which we are taught are the first people in the Americas, don't come over. There is no evidence of them, skulls or skeletons or anything like that, until 3000 BC. So for almost 55,000 years, Africans were the first people and the only people in all three Americas. So around 3000 BC, these Mongolian Asians come in, and they start killing the people, taking their land, but also a little bit of miscegenating going on. That's race mixing, so-called race mixing. This is why the Indians of today do not look exactly like the Asians or the Chinese. They look different. They're taller. Their faces are thinner. They don't have the big round brachiocephalic face. They have the dicephalic skull, the longer skull, and their hair is silky and straight. It's a little. Sometimes it's curly, but it's definitely like horse's hair. It's a little more rough. And so this is what happened. Those are the two first mixes, and then far later on, we have the Chinese come in, and we have the whites come in.
Did you learn anything from writing the first Americans or Africans documented evidence that you didn't know? Was there anything that you learned from writing the book?
Yes, I learned that history is not telling the truth. That's why I'm telling the historic truth and giving the historic truth. That historictruth.info is my website, and I found that the history of the Western Hemisphere has got to
African History Notebook. I'm your host, Dr. Clyde Ahmed Winters. The African History tonight I'm going to talk about some of the ancient people, but I also have a real treat. I'm very excited. Dr. David Imhotep, he's going to be on the show tonight, and he's going to talk about his new book, The First Americans Were Africans, Documented Evidence. This is very exciting to me because Dr. Imhotep is making the black community very excited.